If this number is extrapolated to total health care spending, it comes to a total of $500 billion a year. Did you hear that? $500 billion a year. $500 billion that could be eliminated with tort reform. Tort reform would cap damages and stop punitive damages in medical cases. But the Democrats are avoiding even discussing this because they're owned by the trial lawyers who are some of their biggest contributors. Did you know that Obama's head of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, was the head of the Kansas Trial Lawyers Association for almost 10 years? That's right. And what does Obama have to say about tort reform? Well, when he addressed the American Medical Association recently, he said, I want to be honest with you. I'm not advocating caps on malpractice awards, which I personally believe can be unfair to people who've been wrongfully harmed, close quote. See, he's on the side of the greedy lawyers. You see that? And Obama apparently hasn't read the studies which show that reforms which limit liability, such as caps and damages, certainly reduced hospital expenditures by 5 to 9% and led to virtually no differences in mortality or major complications. But that's what you would expect from Obama. He's on the side of the law sewers. These reforms would reduce costs, reduce government intervention in health care, and increase choice for patients and providers. But Obama is more interested in a payday for trial lawyers than he is for real reform. What Chairman Obama is offering will result in uncontrolled government spending, more taxes to pay for it, and a socialist bureaucracy with enormous power. If Obama really wanted to cut health care costs for Americans, he'd cut the lawyers loose and let the doctors do their job. But he doesn't want to cut costs. He wants to increase costs. And he doesn't want better health care. He just wants better control over your life. And that's what he, the lawyers, the bureaucrats, and the death panels will get if you don't keep speaking out and shouting out at town hall meetings across America. Remember what I just said. It's the lawyers, stupid. So I understand that the jerk who runs CNN, Mr. Klein, which means small, Mr. Small Man of CNN has banned talk show hosts from CNN. Now, of course, I've never been invited on CNN because I can mop the floor up with them, as is true with any other network. The reason they don't want me on is I can mop the floor up with 5 of them at once. But he said that we need serious debate right now. We can't have anyone from talk radio on CNN. Well, I've given you serious debate, and I'm on talk radio, right? I'm a talk radio host. I didn't just give you rhetoric. I gave you 3 ways to save between $500 billion and $1 trillion a year in the medical system. What's intriguing to me is that Obama, the imposter, is trying to impose European-style medical care in America. Now, whether or not you want it or not is one thing, but he's not putting in the controls that the European medical system has to go with it, such as lawsuit controls. If I'm not mistaken, and we're researching it right now, the socialized medical systems in Europe do not permit the kinds of lawsuits that the crooks with law degrees practice here in America. I think that there are strict caps on lawsuits to do with medical malpractice in Europe. How come the great Obama, who's trying to impose a European system on us, won't impose some of the controls? Because he was put in primarily by special interests like the American Trial Lawyers Association. So I've given you that. Cap the lawsuits. Cut off all care to illegal aliens. They're not citizens. Make them pay for it. And the third one, I can give you a third, fourth, fifth. I can give you 5 different ways to save money. You haven't heard one of these things in the debates, have you? Now you know why they don't want Michael Savage on television. Kansas City, Bridget, welcome. You're on the Savage Nation. You disagree on tort reform. Tell us why.
Because I think there are some legitimate cases where $250,000 is just not fair. It's not fair.
Well, not fair to who?
Well, it's not fair to me personally for what
Well, tell us about your case.
I had a hysterectomy, and during the procedure, the doctor put a stitch through the rectum, which tore open, and they didn't listen to me, tell them I wasn't feeling well, I wasn't doing well, and a week later, I was full of what's supposed to come out the other end. Severe septic shock.
Horrible. And what happened? You couldn't collect on that lawsuit?
No. I spent 6 weeks in a coma. I almost died, like 4 times.
I'm saying, did your lawyer sue the hospital or doctor?
Tried to.
And what happened?
We finally settled before it got to court, but for a pittance.
Well, wait. Well, why did you settle?
He did. The doctor.
But why? You just said that you don't want tort reform. And now you're telling me you had a lawyer who sued and settled. So it's not making sense. You weren't impacted by any kind of limits on medical liability. You were impacted by your lawyer who settled for you.
We settled in advance of our, the whatever your limit is. You're to your limit.
All right. Thank you for the call. Well, let me put it to you this way. There probably are egregious examples of medical malpractice that no amount of money could pay for. I agree with that. But when you balance out the entire system of medical malpractice claims, you have to understand that it will balance itself out. You take a guy like John Edwards. He made hundreds of millions of dollars. Remember John Edwards? He made hundreds of millions of dollars convincing juries in the Ozarks, moonshine, the descendants of moonshiners, who was sitting there, didn't understand anything, but the pretty boy comes in and tells him, this poor person was injured by the doctor, when in fact he knew it was a congenital disease, that the person was born that way. It had nothing to do with the hospital or doctor. But old John Edwards convinced the Ozarkians that the doctor was at fault, and he broke out he destroyed hospitals and doctors across the Southeast. So what I'm saying is you get rid of some of these vultures. Well, what more is there to be said? Play some music. Take you back to another time in America. Let us say when John F. Kennedy was president, when a Democrat was more conservative than today's Republicans. You understand what I just said to you? Do you realize, and I've said this for over 10 years now, that by today's standards, the Republican Party has moved so far to the left and so lost its bearings that John F. Kennedy, by today's standards, would be a conservative compared to the Republicans of today. And, of course, the Democrats today are the communists or the neo-Marxists. They don't even understand where they are, nor do they care. They don't care where they are politically. They do not care at all. Neither do I at this point. They're sinking as fast as the 51st Ward can sink. The American people, it's sinking into the American people that Obama is basically a front man for the Daily Machine, and that they're treating the White House as though it's the 51st Ward of Chicago. In other words, it's entered their mind already. So here we are. Now, I'm telling you, I'm taking you back in time. So I'm reading biographies. Hemingway is one of my heroes, etc., and so on. And I, read the New Yorker. There were other magazines that were out that I was reading. I forget them, but I'm running so short a time I could scream. First of all, I ate too much Radicchio last night, which is so acidic, I'll never eat it again. Can they serve me lettuce? Why do I have to eat? Everything's a trick. When I grew up, there was vinegar. Now everything's a trick vinegar. $5,000 a bottle, like wine now. Why does everything have to be special? You ask for a cup of coffee, you got coffee in my day. Now it's 50 different varieties. The same garbage with different prices. Mochiata, macchiata, lacamata, lacawana, choo-choo. What do I have to eat Radicchio for? I have a migraine from the acid. So I'm in a bad mood to begin with. I'm going to play for you a piece of the interview on the podcast of the author of the article, Party of One, Profiler Michael Savage. Profiler Michael Savage by Mr. Senna, right now from the New Yorker on the Savage Nation. Fire
Michael
away.
Savage is one of the most popular conservative talk radio hosts in the country. His show, The Savage Nation, reaches more than 8 million listeners each week.
We so-called conservatives are actually the liberals of America. And the so-called liberals are the actual fascists of America.
Savage's disdain for the left is savage. One of his many books is called Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. But listeners to his show get a lot more than politics, as Califasana tells us in his profile this week. Welcome back, Kay.
Thanks.
So the election of Barack Obama has put conservatives back in the opposition, and that has re-energized talk radio. Is that what got you interested in doing this piece? And why did you pick Michael Savage of all the conservative talk show hosts?
That's part of what got me interested in doing this piece. I'd heard him over the years and found myself listening to him a bunch last year during the election. And he was interesting partly because he seemed to be so off-message.
Oh, I know what you're expecting, but you're not going to get it from me. You'll have to go to one of the other talk show hosts to get Obama's a Marxist and McCain is a war hero. If that's what you want from now until November, you're on the wrong dial position.
Savage, despite being identified as a conservative talk show host, didn't really seem to like McCain that much. Definitely hated Obama. didn't really like Bush.
So he was reacting really differently than the other conservative hosts.